And you're live.
All right, welcome to today's Preschool Coordinator Advisory Meeting. I'm Whitney Stevenson, and I will do the roll call of our members before we get started with our meeting. So as I say your first name, you'll repeat back with your first and last name and that you are present. Simbri? I was going to say, I know she's on there.
Yep. Yeah, I forgot to unmute. Simbri
Okay.
Crisologo, present.
I knew that you were here. Whitney? Christy? Carlina?
Carlina Sharon, present.
Jennifer?
Jennifer Walrod, present. And I think Whitney Fowler is here. But
She just popped up.
She put a comment that she couldn't hear us.
Perfect. Her picture just popped up.
Okay.
She can't hear. So Whitney, if you just want to type present in the chat box, then we can, as you work on that. So we have some new members with us. And Ashla. So just present. Did you say it? Okay. I didn't hear you. Okay, thank you. And then Chris.
He's not downstairs. That's why I was waiting.
Okay. See. Kim Witt, she's raising her hand. I think she's having some, she said present, yes. And then Susan.
Yes.
Thank you. So Susan Matthews. So welcome to our new members, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Williams to move us forward.
All right. So thank you so much, Dr. Stevenson, and welcome our committee members and also our new members. Thank you so much for joining us today. I believe the first time, well, this is my second meeting, as I'm in a new role. But I believe the first time that I met with you all, school had not started. So I hope your school year is going off or have started off to a great start. And just want to say welcome to you all. I do want to she is now my assistant. I'm very happy that she's a part of the group, and very happy to hear her report as she's talked a lot around the work that we're doing with our people. So again, welcome, and I look forward to continue to collaborate and provide input as needed. So I'll turn it back over to
Andrea. That's why I was the introduction, because I knew that was coming. That was kind of Andrea on here was going to introduce and welcome our new members, but since she's not here, I will jump in and do that. And since I am meeting everyone too for the first time today, our new members, if you want to say who you are and what district you're representing and the RTC that you're coming from. So I'll start with Ashla. Okay.
I'm Ashla Van Hoos, Pikeville Independent Schools, and I'm coming from the Ashland RTC.
All right, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for joining our group. Okay. All right, Susan.
Hi, I'm Susan Mathis, and I'm coming from Cabrera Independent Schools, and I am with the Franklin Simpson RTC.
Great, thank you. And then we have Chris is not with us. That she may have been going down to get Chris maybe. And then Ms. Witt.
I'm from Bath County, and I'm with Ashland RTC.
Thank you very much. So welcome to our group. We're very excited that you have joined us. We're doing some exciting work. Exciting for us in the early childhood field. Others may be like, what? But we're very excited to be on this group to be able to move things forward for a state-funded program. So thank you all very much. And then since Andrea is not here, I'll go ahead and read the purpose statement. The Preschool Coordinator Advisory Group was created to advise the Office of Special Education and Early Learning on unmet needs and issues relevant to state-funded preschool. The PCAG consists of 10 members who represent each region across the state. The members of this group are actively engaged within the work of state-funded preschool. These members provide valuable feedback and suggestions on critical issues that align with the OCL priorities, and this feedback is used to help shape the guidance and support being provided by the OCL staff. So that is our purpose. That's why we're here. And again, welcome to everyone. You are going to hear me talk a lot because Christy Lewis, oh, she's on there. All right. Christy's here. So we can mark Christy as present. She is here. I know she jumped in from something else. Are you ready to jump in, Christy, or?
I am. I'm trying to pull up the norms on my side, so just give me a second. I can't find that. I
And
apologize.
I can read them if you want me to. That's not a problem.
You know what? I will let you read them so I don't delay the meeting.
That's great. And we actually have another member coming in. I assume you might be Chris. Is that welcome, Chris? Thank you. So Chris, I'm going to let you get settled and then we'll swing back to an introduction. I'm going to go ahead and go over our norms for the meeting. Members must keep their cameras on if they are virtual. Members must speak when called on for roll call or any voting. The meeting is being recorded. Reminder to stay focused on the topic agenda at hand for the sake of time in the hybrid environment. Raise hand in the chat can be used for questions if you're virtual. Additional feedback is provided through the meeting exit slip, and the secretary is taking notes, and Joe McCowan stores and manages our documents. So those are our meeting norms that we have, that we go over at every meeting. And then I'm going to circle back and just have you introduce yourself to us, Chris, and tell us who you represent and which district and then which RTC.
I am Chris Westerfield, Davis County. I represent Callaway County.
All right, well, welcome. So Chris is present for today's meeting, so thank you for being here. Did you get an agenda? That was okay, perfect. All right. So the next part of the agenda is to review and approval of the July 28th meeting minutes, and those are in our Google Drive. For those that are new, that we have a Google Drive and those documents live in there for us to review. So we'll just take a minute if our folks that were at the last meeting hadn't had a chance to review those.
Please let me know if you need access to that folder as well. You can just request access and I can provide permission for you.
I sent an email on that. Access.
Okay. I'll make sure I'll respond to that to get you going, Chris.
I need those too. Kim Witt. Kim.
Okay. So I'll make sure and follow up for Chris and Kim.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Ashley?
And Susan probably does. Susan, do you need access?
I'm sorry.
You got it?
You got it?
Okay.
And Chris, I should introduce myself. I'm Whitney Stevenson. I'm the chair, and I'm talking a lot today. So usually it's not just me talking, but yes. And then Christy Lewis on here is our co-chair. So she has joined us as well. So we're going to ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our July 28th, 2022 preschool coordinator meeting. Do I have a motion?
This is Christy Lewis. I so approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. Jennifer Walrod.
Right. It says ask. Any discussion? All right, so we will vote on this. So again, I will say your name and let us know if you approve the minutes. Simbury?
Yes.
Okay. Whitney? I think she may be trying to, she's
having issues.
yeah. I think she's on the phone.
She's talking to Becca.
Yeah.
Make us coordinator.
So she asked you to just give a thumbs up. Raise your hand. Christy?
Yes.
And then Carlina?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
And Ashla? Well, so what about those that were here before or that are new? As far as they haven't seen the minutes, we just.
I think.
Just need to send out a summary of the minutes.
Yeah.
So just go. Okay, so we do. Okay, Ashla?
Yes.
Okay. Chris?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And then Susan?
Yes.
All right. The approval passes. And, okay, the next on our agenda is not me talking, which is a good thing. So I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Williams. He introduced Ms. Reeves just a little bit ago, and she's going to provide us an update. And we actually had discussed this at our meeting in July, just to bring to the committee what this update looks like. So thank you for being here today.
Sure.
And Alicia, I wanted to make sure they can hear you okay up here. Christy, can you hear Alicia? Can you hear her okay? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great.
And I will do my best to use my teacher voice. I've been practicing whispering all week, so I'll try to bring that back up. So as you all have probably heard multiple times, so the ARP team, American Rescue Plan Funding had an early learning team that brought early learning specialists to the department. And we started our work by doing environmental scans across the state and choosing districts, a few out of each region, out of each RTC region, based on their size, their demographics, to make sure we had just a varied representation across the state. Not a huge sampling, but varied sampling. And as a part of those environmental scans, we found out that what you all know, across the state, COVID had impact in certain areas, and it was not specific to the size of your district or the demographics of your district. We all saw the same problems and concerns, and those included the students' social and emotional well-being and the demonstration of significant challenging behaviors within the classroom environment. We saw across the state a decrease in preschool enrollment of close to or over 6,000 kids. That is rebounding. And I think everybody's anxiously awaiting to see what child count numbers show. And I know that in your districts, you're probably feeling that rebound. We do recognize that the students that are enrolling now tend to have more significant needs than the students we have had in the past. We saw across the district a need for teacher training in various areas, including literacy, math, MTSS, and RTI. And as partially because of the next bullet that we saw across our scans was teacher turnover. The number of new teachers that we have in our classrooms and the number of teachers we have teaching outside of their certification areas. And so just really helping the field of new teachers know what quality early childhood looks like and how to run those classrooms. And then teacher well-being. And I think the teacher turnover and teacher well-being go hand in hand. Our teachers are stressed, and just we're faced with a lot of new challenges. And none of that is new information to anybody who's listening. So one of the things that happened is through ARP funding, each early childhood RTC received funding to hire a PBIS pyramid coach. The RTCs were already doing the pyramid work, but this allowed that work to continue and then also allowed it to grow and develop so they could personalize it to our districts in the state of Kentucky. So those coaches use the pyramid model, and if you don't know, that's positive behavior interventions and support. So PBIS framework that uses implementation science to promote evidence-based practices. And the pyramid model was created for early childhood educators and to provide training on nurturing relationships, environments. And I love the pyramid model work because it really captures everything that we say about Kentucky preschool. It captures our focus on quality environment. And so it just, I love how it connects to the work that we're already doing. And maybe to just kind of give you a background on me, because we did not do that in the introduction part. I was preschool coordinator, special ed director, in two different small school districts in South Central Kentucky. So spent 16 and a half years as a preschool coordinator. So doing the jobs that you all are doing now. one of the things, how the PBIS work has changed in the RTCs with the switch to the ARP funding is rather than all of the districts being able to sign on for support with intensive support, they have kind of a tiered system. So there's an opportunity for universal support, meaning, if you want an overall training for all of your teachers, just to familiarize them with the pyramid model work or with specific strategies. Then there is targeted support, and that means that the things you've always done, you call your RTC and say, I need help with this particular classroom, with these particular students. So it just now has a name, it's targeted support, or the intensive support. And that's where they work hand in hand with the district or an individual site within the district to provide coaching and training and assistance, observations in the classroom, those types of things. I do know that the RTCs have reached out and shared this information with districts, so that part should be nothing new. To date, we have 35 districts involved in this work, 77 buildings and 209 classrooms. So a large scope of work happening across the state. And another piece that I really liked about this is we are speaking the same language. And not only are we speaking the same language across the state of Kentucky, but we're also speaking the same language that is at the national level. So when we talk about implementing PBIS in Kentucky, we can use the data that we're collecting and compare it at a national level. I thought that was pretty. So teacher leader community is one of our next big buckets of work. And that is, we have 73 of our state-funded preschool teachers from across the state. And this community practice is designed to help connect teachers to share ideas and strategies and really help them grow as teacher leaders. One of the things that when we were doing our environmental stands, and so we started doing some research on why are teachers leaving the field? Why are they walking away? And so much of the research says, you want to say it's pay. We're not paid well, that type of thing. But at the end of the day, it's leadership and their thoughts about how leadership views them as a professional, their teacher efficacy, their ability to say, I want to learn these types of things. These are some ideas for professional development that I know would improve my classroom and being able to move forward. And just being acknowledged as the leaders that they are. Again, I do feel like I'm preaching to the choir a little bit here, but our teachers are certified. Many of them have master's degrees. And what they do in preschool classrooms is some of the most incredible teaching that I've ever seen. So just really creating a space where we celebrate that and we let teachers talk. We've had 2 in-person events to date. We have one more tomorrow, Friday, and one more next week. And so we've been in Eastern Kentucky and then this area, which has a little bit of everybody. It seemed like they were from all over. But they were so excited to talk to one another about, like, if I'm a preschool teacher in a small district here and I'm the only preschool teacher in that district, all of a sudden you connected me to another preschool teacher who's the only teacher in their district, and we can collaborate and talk to one another. So they really like that. We are sharing with them some leadership skills and strategies, and really talking to them about the PLC process and what that looks like in early childhood. We've spent a lot of time talking about, between now and Christmas, consider one partner that you can collaborate with. If you're in a pre-K to 5 building, can you walk across the hall and talk to your kindergarten teacher and start sharing, that vertical alignment of this is what we're doing and this is what kindergarten's doing and how do we support one another. So they were really excited about that. We also provided them with some resources. So we did provide them with a resource on PLCs, and we provided them with some resources about topics we will cover in our virtual meetings throughout the year, such as resource on math, family engagement, that kind of thing. We also talked to them about DEC recommended practices and NACE's developmentally appropriate practices, and recognizing that both of those entities include leadership as a part of evidence-based practices for working with children in early childhood. And so just really kind of growing that conversation. From this point forward, we will have virtual meetings with them monthly. They are after school, so if they come to you and ask for professional development hours, those times are going to be after school. We will provide them with an agenda and a certificate, so hopefully you'll have the correct documentation for that. And we'll be covering topics such as family engagement. When COVID happened, our families, which preschool did such a great job of including them, couldn't come into our schools. And how are we getting them back into our schools, or how are we changing how we communicate with families? Math, literacy, a lot of talk about kindergarten readiness and transition, how to support our preschoolers going into kindergarten. And we are also asking them to, because they are teacher leaders, so we're expecting them to be leading in their district. So we're also asking them to, if they have areas that they feel like they have certain expertise or they have great strategies or they feel very successful, we're capturing that and we're going to include them in leading those virtual sessions. So really just growing a community of practice across the state. The other big area is literacy and early learning. We recognize that during the height of the pandemic, not only were Kentucky children not coming to preschool, but they weren't going anywhere. Our community, our restaurants were closed, our churches were closed. All of the places outside of school that our young learners go to communicate and learn and grow were not accessible during the pandemic. So not only did they miss out on so many opportunities, but a lot of language opportunities, a lot of opportunities for conversations. And so not being exposed to those different types of oral language has impacted their overall language development. I think you may see your speech numbers are higher this year. Anyway. I could just leave that right there. And then, a big concern is if our oral language didn't develop, what will our reading skills look like when we're in third grade? So really focusing on that early literacy piece. So we've been providing some trainings around the state, at state level conferences. We had somebody present at the Early Childhood Institute, DOSE Institute, the CCEIS training that went on here this week. And looking at expanding that over the next few months and growing into some more training that might be available by the summer. And then OSIL Guides is a mentorship program for new administrators. We are currently working on matching. We have more needs out in the field and we have mentors available. So we're working on matching those up so we can provide support for our new administrators. And really, I know from working in RTCs and working with the co-op, that happens automatically, right? You all as experienced admin see a new admin and you're like, hey, give me a call if you need this, give me a call if you need that. But just trying to kind of maybe formalize that a little bit more. And for the ones who don't feel comfortable doing that, giving them that support person. So that is still in the development process. And then we have other projects that we really love the United We Learn vision, and what that means for teaching and learning across the state. So we have some other projects that capture that vision that are on the horizon that are still in development form. So that's kind of where ARP is right now. And we have now come completely under the early learning unit within the office.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
I do.
Okay.
So you're talking about the PLCs for early childhood teachers and that you provided them resources. What, and we've looked at this at Fayette County because we have PLC work that's happening, but they do look different and should, I guess, feel a little bit different for early childhood. So what resources, or was there like a book that you had?
Yes.
Like we have a book that we're going through, so I just want to see if it's the same or there's anything different out there for us to.
Yes, the book is it's Success for Early Learning. I'd have to pull it up to give you the full title and the author.
That would be enough if I can Google that.
Well, I'm gonna make sure I said that correctly because I'm a visual person and I can see it, but I may not quote everything correctly. So I will.
So it's Success for
Young Learners.
Okay.
The author is Barbara. CIRIGLIAN.
And we went through multiple sources trying to determine which one. We went with one because it's an easy read. It is directed specifically at early childhood. And the pieces of it are, they quote DeFore all the way through the book.
Sure.
So it has that foundation, but the way it's written, you can pick up the pieces and implement them pretty easily and take it bite by bite and not have to do the whole thing all at once. So it's overwhelming.
Sure.
And it builds professional learning communities as a concept, as how your school grows, not as I go to a PLC meeting on Tuesday.
Right.
And it does focus on understanding that the goal for our PLC is student learning. And we talked about, preschool does. They have the standards. They follow them really well. They assess the standards. But the part that we've seen in the meetings, the aha is that they don't always take that data and reflect on it holistically. They look at where this individual student is and where they're going. But what does that look like as a classroom? What does that look like as a program? And how do we articulate? Because remember, we're focusing on growing as leaders and growing the profession. So how do we articulate that holistic data? And we've had some beautiful examples from across the state of the conversations that are taking place. And then we've had some people that, one of the interesting things is preschool classrooms in pre-K through 5 buildings. Many of those teachers, when they introduce themselves as a preschool classroom in a K-5 building. Not having that holistic pre-K through 5 building. And so that was kind of an aha, is how do we get to the table and how do we and make sure that we're contributing to what's going on holistically in the school. So but that's why we chose that book.
Great.
It was a hard thing to do, but we kind of were like, we gotta go with something.
Right. Yeah.
Christy has a question.
Sure.
Ms. Reeves, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Is there a way that we can receive some of those resources that you're giving at the leadership meetings? I would love, I know we didn't have anybody that, I guess applied to attend. And, I think I would like to have that as a director just to share out, or is that something you want to keep in that leadership to continue, to build capacity, for teacher leaders? I'd love to have some of those resources just to study to be a better director and know how to support the staff better.
So certainly we can share those resources, like a list of those resources with you. We absolutely can do that. It's nothing super magical or anything. The books that we chose, we really tried to stick with things that were supported by NACCE, and make sure that we are aligned with best practices in early childhood. But yeah, we can get you a list of those resources.
Thank you so much. It
Well-
helps build my professional library as well. And then I guess the only other thing, when you were talking about family engagement, I'd like to just share out, I've been working with the Pritchard Committee on their family-friendly schools, and they've got a great model of working through family engagement and kind of what tiers you're at. So we can talk about that at a later date, but I just kind of want to plug that in there for everybody's ideas. That's a great tool and resource to look at what you're currently doing, see where you fall, and how, when we've been going through it, it's helped us kind of look at how can we encourage and engage and involve families. I guess you call it post-COVID. I don't really know now. But getting them back in the routine, and parents have to be on that committee, and it's been a great self-assessment and figuring out where we go from here. So just sharing that info.
We have reviewed that, and it is some great information to have.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, I have a comment, and I just kind of want to piggyback off of Alicia and some of the things that she mentioned. I had an opportunity to participate with the teacher meeting community yesterday, and it was absolutely amazing. My heart was actually full. I came back and I had to tell Alicia, I said, this was great, right? Because we had teachers in one setting building capacity and building community with one another. And just hearing the conversation and the resources that they provided was great, because these resources are quick reads, they're not long chapters, and it's easy to get through. So I just say that, we just appreciate all the work that our ARP team is doing to build capacity throughout the Commonwealth. Also, we're looking to sustain this work, right? So we know that in 2024, September of 2024, that these funds, they'll be leaving. So we're looking as a team and as an office on how we can continue this work throughout the state. So I did also kind of want to put that out as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation about many things about sustainability, like just I'm sure in everybody's districts about these things. So
Well, and just because I haven't gotten a chance to talk to you yet, Carlina, but just one of the neatest things that happened, Carlina has a teacher who has an outdoor classroom, and shared so much about what she does with that. Just absolutely amazing. And there was a newer teacher who had applied, but she is trying to grow as a teacher leader, who has access to space for an outdoor classroom, and she had already started doing some things. And watching the two of them connect and share the vision, and they're demographically, they're not that far from one another, it was like, oh, this is why we're doing this, so that they can celebrate all of the amazing things that they are doing. Because I've never been in a preschool classroom where somebody was not, up on their feet, moving, interacting with kids, and making magic things happen. And you could just see how invigorated we were from that moment. So.
And Ms. Lewis, the resources, I think I asked for resources yesterday also. I think I said, Alicia, can I have a few resources? So I definitely, I am also constantly wanting to brush up on my program development as well. So it's something that we can all use to increase our capacity too.
And that is part of what we're talking to the teachers about, is growing as a leader, is constantly making sure you are exposing yourself to research, best practices, those types of things, so that we're not okay with status quo.
Nope.
We're okay with constantly moving forward.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, we appreciate that. We're so glad that you came. I don't know who suggested that at our last meeting, but thank you, whoever of us did that. We appreciate your time and coming.
Thank you for sharing your teachers with us.
Yeah. And we look forward to the follow-up and the resources and the information. So thank you. This may not be the last time that we ask you to come and give an update. I'm just saying if you get another invite. So, but thank you for that. We really appreciate you coming. The next part of the agenda is discussion of mixed delivery models. And we had talked about this at our meeting back in the summer, just that as a state that we know that this conversation is happening at various levels, and that state funded, we need to be part of that conversation, not outside looking in, that we're all early childhood, we're all in it together. And so, hopefully we're making strides with that. There is the Early Childhood Task Force, and I never know how exactly to explain it, that it's legislators that have come together to study the early childhood field in Kentucky. And I will say a lot of their focus has been on the childcare sector, looking at, universal preschool, like that, just a lot of questions. And the last couple of meetings that we've actually, as state funded, been able to speak into some of the mixed delivery model pieces. Amy Smith is it Pulaski? Is that correct? Pulaski. She presented on what they do. I was asked to present on what we do in Fayette County under this. And so we just felt like we probably should just continue to have that conversation, because I think that, as we move forward with whatever that looks like, if universal is state or federal, or if it doesn't, or just the partnerships of how we can serve, because as Christy used, post-COVID, every community looks a little bit different, or really different after COVID. And what does that look like to serve our students? So for mixed delivery, does anybody have anything that they would like to share about what they're currently doing in their counties to partner with child care programs, to share kids? Any ideas that you've seen? Oh, Christy, I'm looking at Christy. She doesn't know I'm looking at her, because she's setting on one of the big partnerships that, we can do in state funded and with Head Start.
I'll just share a little bit about that, Wendy. I think, or I guess I don't think, I know that when we take the child first and do whatever's best for that child and that family, sometimes that's wraparound care, because the parent has to go to work early. So making sure that we partner and wrap around with a child care center, that's a mixed delivery. State funded pre-K or blended with Head Start. Talking to Andrea, when we've had these conversations, if we can just keep the child and the family in the middle of that focus, we all have where we think it should lie, but when we do what's best for the family, everything always works out in the end. So I know that we need to just continue that, but all learn how to, I think we're kind of the hidden gem sometimes. We need to share about how great our state pre-K system is. We need to share what those high quality classrooms look like. But then it's also educating families on how to support them in getting their child care assistance. Sometimes all that falls through the cracks, but we have to, walk them through all of those steps. So I definitely think the mixed delivery piece is key, because it's not just one and done. Each family is different. So that's just kind of my 2 cents. All the wraparound supports that families need is so beneficial. But just making sure that we're all working together to share those resources, because one budget can't cover it all.
And that's what, as you said that, and never did we hear that you said state funded was it. Like, because I think we all recognize like what in our communities, what it looks like, what our families, the families that we serve, the families that we don't serve, but the agencies and the, the childcare that they use, that it is we work together as a team for that. And in our districts, we currently do that. And I think just the term mixed delivery model means something for a lot of people. And I think sometimes that definition leaves out state funded, but we're a part of that conversation as well. And, have things to bring to the table. Anybody? Any experiences? And this is what I share with the task force. In Fayette County, we have a partnership with the University of Kentucky Early Childhood Lab. We provide, in years past, before COVID, we provided teaching staff there and served children on site. Now, since COVID and UK needing initially to have all of their spaces to meet the ratios that they needed for childcare, we now are paying them to serve the students on site there. It's a small number, but the goal is to get back to us providing. But that partnership's been there for, 50 years. So we didn't want to lose that partnership with them. And then we partner with a family care center, which is a government-run entity that provides childcare 6 weeks to 5 years old. We have a classroom on site there. We provide the teaching staff there. And then they provide services for high school students that have young children. The young children can go to the childcare program. They have an on-site health clinic. It is just a phenomenal community resource. And we've had a partnership there for almost 50 years. And again, at that location too, we share children. So we have, and it literally, they just walk through the bathroom because the classroom's where they are. But they'll have children that come there for childcare that qualify for our program. So they just walk over to that and then go back. And then we have some children that are bused there. So they don't attend the childcare program there, but they come there. And people were surprised to, I think, hear that at the task force meeting that we are doing that. And that's things that we do across the state. But in this light of, where we are with, I think, just definitions of mixed delivery models and what that can look like, it's just kind of saying we already do this. We are working very successfully. We partner with, I can't remember the number of childcare programs that I had in my slide, but that we share children with childcare programs. And they may go there and then come to us and then go back. And that's not for every child because that is a transition and not every student's transition easily. And we understand that. And, we work with families. We've gone out to childcare programs and kind of getting to Christy's point, because the child is at the center of this. We've gone out to childcare programs to help support those students that we know need additional supports. And the teachers that need additional just support and how we can support them going out and coaching and things. So I think it's for us just to kind of keep that in the forefront and just keep our ears open as those conversations happen, whether in your community or at the state level, just to make sure that people understand that state funded has a piece in this. We don't want to own it. Like, we're not saying it's, we want every child and we want this. But there's the partnership that comes with this to ensure that we're serving, reaching all the families that want to participate in some form of childcare, or they need childcare, that we're all there working together with that.
Here in Bath County, we have a partnership. We're in a daycare desert. So we have one daycare in the county, and it's at a church. That particular church, the pastor started this daycare, and he really does not want to partner with anybody. He wants to do things his own way. And that's okay. I like him. I live in this little community. He's providing a good service. But we have the longest running school-based childcare in the state. We have been here since the inception of when you were able to do that. The person that started that just retired in October. So I've been handed that I've always been the district person, but I was never, she always kept such a good handle on it. It's been such an eye opener because the things like billing, like now on Fridays, I'm special ed director, child care director, MTS, and now I add up the bills and send the bills out. So, some things, we've hired a new director, but she's getting her feet wet, and it is monumental. And I feel like the issues we're providing, we rarely turn anybody away here. We want them to get something either at Head Start, and we serve Head Start, with our disability providers, our teachers and therapists. And our preschool, we have gone to full day preschool with the help of the new funding. And we did have 2 classrooms. Now we have 4. The logistics of everything are the only hiccups. And logistics meaning transportation from one place to another when you don't have bus drivers. Transportation from one place to another when you don't have monitors. Nobody wants to be a monitor. It doesn't pay very well. It's not many hours in the day. It's it's an issue. Some of the only hiccups we've had are logistical things, and but we're providing what we need to be providing for our young families here. And our young families, my children are the ages of those parents now, my own children, and it really hits me harder than it ever did, because I imagine my children live in Louisville, and what are they going to do when they have children? And we've been so fortunate to be able to provide child care and preschool and wraparound services, and be able to let people go to work and provide a good program. But I just hope our funding continues, because we look down the road on when this funding ends, and this has provided, our preschool population has doubled because of this, because half-day programs do not work for families. They just don't, and they don't work for the families that need the most, because the families that need the most have a flat tire on their car, and they can't pick the kid up when you just provide one-way transportation. They don't have gas to get there. So, I just hope that we can find more funding to keep on being able to provide what we're providing right now because of this pandemic funding.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. We have, the majority of our classes are half day, and, we get that feedback, and that there's just a lot of logistical things, with that, with space and how you can do it. But it is, yeah, I mean, it is tough, for sure.
Our school board has supported us. I mean, they believe strongly in this, and they've made sure that I needed to add another classroom. It's funded out of general funds, but you just need money's to provide all this stuff.
Yes, and you were speaking of Head Start, and as Christy was telling about Head Start, so for us in Fayette County, we have blended and partnership classrooms where they provide a staff person in a couple of classrooms, and then they pay us to serve students. And part of also, I mean, for me, when I think of mixed delivery model, we have a dual enrollment sheet that has Head Start information or state funded, and has a little blurb about each. And so if a person doesn't qualify for our program, or they're not interested, we are always sharing that information back and forth with them, just to make sure that if families are seeking this out, whatever meets their needs, they have the resources or the opportunity to know where to find it. So, but I part of this discussion, and as you were sharing this, I think this is something, mixed delivery model, that I encourage you all, when you go to your RTC meetings, that you're sharing this with the others in your district, just to say, what is it that you do in your community, what for mixed delivery model. I think just for all of us to be thinking about that. So if we are asked by our legislator that's in our area, or you're asked to come to the task force, that it is something that's already percolating with us as a group, and all of the program coordinators across the state of Kentucky.
So for you online, it's Andrea. Hi, friends. One thing that we've been talking about with the Family Care Center and UK Lab, those are considered preschool contractors. I send out the preschool contract every September usually. That's where you contract with these folks at. That's where you can build those relationships. In that contract is everything that you have to do, all of the ins and outs and the regs and all of that in there for both you and the program that you're going to be contracting with. I send that out. A lot of times they get a lot of questions. Not a Head Start contract, that's your full utilization and your MOA. But this is where those partnerships can align. So And that's not a one-time, once-a-year thing. So if you move into January and you are filling up, but yet you have a great relationship with the childcare in your area, fill out that contract, work with them, talk with them, see if you can get that done and send it to us and we can look at it and approve it. We used to have a lot of those contracts. They have dwindled. I think this year we only have 3. And they're all yours.
Oh, wow.
Lucky you. So it's something that I think is, we kind of gone insular, like, oh, we're in our school, but our superintendents are more supportive. We have more spaces. We have brand new buildings being built, which is great. But as we now start to think about universal preschool, that mixed delivery model is going to be vital to the success of anything that has to do with universal, because there's just not space for all the kids that need to come. So as we kind of go back out into our communities, think about those, share that with your RTCs, as Whitney was saying. When you go back and we talk about these meetings, share that with them. This is what that contract means, especially our new coordinators. Sometimes they don't understand it. We try to explain it to them as much as we can. But it's definitely something to look into if you're looking to expand. And feel free to hit me up with any questions about that if you got.
When you said that about the RTC, it made me think too, if you're not already like on that regular agenda whenever you all meet, definitely ask your RTC coordinator to ask for a space to do preschool coordinator advisory updates, just so everybody across the state is hearing that. And as far as the contracts go, so we actually, sometimes they're revisited, by UK, like they want to change something every year. I mean, those contracts go through our legal department, they go through UK's legal department. Then for the city, they go through the city government legal department. So they are gone through with a fine tooth comb. But when we send those, like I always attach the contract letter from KDE to show that it's a partnership and that they're approved partnership. And this is why we're asking with that. So over the last couple of years, we've revamped the contracts, and so now it really, unless we're doing a major change, we can kind of just tweak it real fast for the year and get it sent through. So, but that is on the child care program or the program you're partnering with. They're the ones who submit the contract to KDE. So, but I'm glad that you mentioned that. That is something that is very, very important in that process. Any other feedback about mixed delivery model? Here?
I met with one of our local legislators who reached out to me because she is on that committee, and we had a really good discussion about mixed delivery and about, if you're thinking about family first, that universal preschool with all of us is family first. Mm-hmm. Because as we continue to debate this, families are getting left out.
Correct.
So we talked a lot about some ways that you can bring everybody to the table. She was very, I think had reached out to all partners and had a lot of good ideas. So I'm really hoping that we will advance forward.
I will say, I think it was last month that I was presented at the task force meeting. And after that meeting, I did get feedback from someone that said it is changing the tide or the view of state funded by having people come in the more that they are looking into this, like that it is part of the model. So that was really good to hear that there is, that as people learn more, because I mean, I think we assume that everybody knows what we do in state funded. I was in a meeting yesterday in our district and we were talking about state funded, and the person, leaned over and asked somebody, so these are 3 and 4 year olds, right? And you just make an assumption that people have that, and, to clarify what that is. So great. Thank you all for that discussion. And like I said, if you think of anything, we'll definitely probably keep revisiting this, because it is something that I think is definitely, we're going to have at some point a state conversation about the whole framework of the early childhood piece and where state funded fits into that. So the next thing on our agenda is discussion of child outcome summary process. And so we were putting the agenda together. I thought this might just be a good place to get, some feedback on how that's going and what's that's looking like in each district. I see smiles on everybody's faces as I say that. Everybody's grinning. So Just feedback. I mean, I think it's something, I think we all know that we're just, this is the learning year and we're just, getting through and figuring it out. But just, things that work, just, things that have worked for your district or things, the support that you're providing, your teachers or what you're doing with that. And then just, as we go through, I think just keeping maybe a list at your district of, hey, maybe we should consider this or things to consider. Because once we get through this year, I think that's, KDE will ask for feedback or want to know how it went. And I think if we don't keep the feedback as we go along, just in a notebook or to ourselves, by the end of the year, it's like, oh, we made it through. You know what I mean? And then we'll hit the same things next year because we're just thankful that we made it through and that we're hitting the summer. So, any feedback about the COS system, how it's going, what's in your district?
Davis County's got a little less than, complete
Okay.
so far. We're using an online form that we try and get parents to give us feedback. That's probably been the most difficult piece, is getting the parental input. And we're using that. We're using our meetings. We're using our parent-teacher conferences just to try and get the input.
Right.
Another area of difficulty for it is those kids that are not within our building. Those kids that have speech-only services, and you're not really involved with them. It's very difficult getting their teachers, the other people that are involved with positive notes. We sort of revamped what everybody does. Although we have a pretty large district, it's just me and an administrative assistant and a 100-day employee at our central office. So we have pulled.
It's tough.
Yes, it's tough. We have pulled a lot of what our teachers do and have restructured what we're doing to support them as far as teaching strategies go, as far as preschool tabs, as far as entering the kids and all that, to allow them to focus more on the parent interaction, gathering,
right,
the purpose of it.
That's great. Yeah, you brought up the children that aren't in your building, like I won't say when, but along the lines, we were like, oh my gosh, like what are we gonna? So yeah, we have to start back around, because you're hitting this full on with the children in your program. It's like, oh my gosh, we've got to circle around. So thank you for that feedback. I mean, that sounds a lot of, where for our family involvement, where we're trying to gather information and get those pieces in. Thank you.
Well, Chris probably deserves a shout out because in our RTC, he was the one that had kind of jumped in front and created this survey, and he shared it with all of us, which was wonderful. Kind of gave all of us a stepping off point, which was huge to help each other, because the parent piece is hard. I mean, we have 620 children. We're trying to get the parent piece on, and the parent pieces that are coming back at 6 and 7. Then we got the battle of just getting the parent, the parent piece.
Right.
So, I think that's been challenging. I think anytime you make a change, especially that close to the beginning of the year, is a challenge. Mm-hmm. We're trying to do the same thing as keep it off of our teachers' plates as much as possible. Then our service providers, we had to create something to be able to collect theirs, our speech language pathologists and all those people.
Right.
So we are starting to get some of those pieces to come together. And I think, and Andrea and I have talked about this, but I think one of the biggest things for our district is the assessment that we use is not an assessment that our district uses for instructional purposes. So we are paying a tremendous amount of money to use an assessment for the collection of this information. And I'm hoping that that is something that we will be able to consider in the future, that maybe there are, and I do believe that there are ways that we can collect this data, have evidence to prove that we have what we need and not have to purchase something that we aren't using on a regular basis. So, and we have tried to use it with Fidelity in the past. you know, but there is a point where you do, I think when you were mentioning something about being an island, you know, when kindergarten teachers are coming to you and saying, can you stop putting that in the cumulative record? Because we don't do anything with that and we don't know anything about it. You know, even when you've tried to like train them on it. And that's no slap to kindergarten teachers. That is just reality.
Right.
You know, I have a lot to work on, and the state is asking me to give this assessment to kindergarten kids, and I want to be looking at that kind of information.
Yeah.
So I do hope that that's something we'll be able to continue to explore in the future.
Yeah.
Jennifer has a question. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm glad she mentioned the folder, because that's a question I believe that came up at our Anderson preschool coordinators meeting, specifically to Whitney and I, is that these are expected to go into cumulative folders, but I don't know that the districts that's been shared with them. And so we are getting pushback on that, that there's only supposed to be certain things in the folder and this would not be one. So if the State Department could come out with a statement or, you know, something to those district leaders, then I think that would be helpful. To those student service personnel or whoever manages your folders.
Thanks, Jennifer. We'll discuss that. That is an issue. You're right.
Yeah.
We want to be able to monitor it at the state level if, you know, we come in for consolidated or something, you know, but there might be a better place for that to live. So we'll have to talk about that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
I have to say, several years ago, I sat on a committee for cumulative folders for the district and what goes in them and what isn't done. So anytime anybody mentions a cumulative folder, I'm like, oh my God. I mean, those were intense meetings. I mean, so it was, I get that. I mean, that was some intense conversations around cumulative folders. So, yes.
I think Whitney Fowler was trying to say something.
I think that she.
Speak there. Whitney, can we hear you? I don't think we can't hear you, Whitney. I'm sorry. Do you want to put something in the chat?
Poor Whitney. Technology is fun and it works for you.
Sorry about the technical difficulties today.
Something that I did in Fayette County for our staff is I put together like a one pager. I did a PowerPoint. I did a voiceover on the PowerPoint, and I went in Infinite Campus and took screenshots of every single and put arrows like this is where you're going to put, this is where you're going to do. And then I did what we call Let's Chat. So I had a time a couple of weeks ago where myself and our program specialists were available, and if teachers could jump on and ask questions. It was I think about a half hour, and we recorded it and sent it out to the staff that couldn't be there. But those that came, what they did is we were talking through it. They jumped on like some for the first time and began to look through it and had questions. So it was really good. So, I mean, and we told them that we're available at any time to answer questions, but just giving them those different formats just to try to problem solve. Like if they couldn't get something to work, like, you know, try here first. This may be what it is. So just providing them with those resources that we just created, or, you know, just felt like we just need to push out in as many ways as we could. And I was like, you can watch, or you can look at the PowerPoint, you can listen to the PowerPoint, you can look at the one pager. It's all the same information, but it's just in however that you want to access it. So we hadn't gotten much feedback, so we were, you know, keeping tabs on how people are doing with it. So we're hoping that, you know, we know people are kind of moving through it and checking with their program specialists if they have questions.
Whitney said she knows after going to the RTC meetings that we all feel better with COS. And so I'm assuming that the RTCs have been able to really help answer questions and address guidance.
Yeah, the RTC.
Whitney Anderson.
Anderson. Yeah, Whitney, you're with Anderson RTC, correct? Yep. Yes.
One of the small things that I'd like to see them do on that form at least add the 5 in, but where it just says.
Yeah, like that.
I pointed that out in our PowerPoint in the sheet because I know I had a staff person that I work closely with. She was like, can you choose that? Can you do that? And I was like, well, yes, but I'm going to include it.
Yeah, but what I'm doing right now is I'm running reports, ad hoc reports, so I can present, the district data on what it looks like, and you know, you have to go back in and edit all those.
That is something that went from us to IC and came out different on the end.
That's what I figured. It was just a glitch. It looks like it was just a glitch, but we were like, but we knew that would stop some people from like moving forward, but then in the end, running the reports.
We can't update it yet, because it's in the process, so it's a whole big thing behind the scenes, so, yeah.
But know exactly what you're talking about. So we had that conversation.
Yeah, I will say, I think that, you asking about the RTC, Assembly County RTC, I would say the same thing.
Okay.
They've been wonderful about, offering us a training, being willing to come into our districts and train. When we realized that our, service providers needed to also give a score, I didn't want to be responsible for that training.
Right.
So the RTC also, invited all of our service providers, and that included, OT, PT, hearing impaired, vision impaired, so there was a lot of people that attended. So they've been wonderful about reaching out and helping.
Speaking of the IC issues, so if you are having issues in Infinite Campus, and again, take this back to your RTC meeting. If you're having any issues with the actual system itself, right, access, that kind of stuff, and your local IC person cannot figure it out, shoot me an email and I'll get you hooked up, or whoever hooked up with our IC people. That way we can go ahead and get those knocked out. Sometimes it's just a coding issue that our Infinite Campus people have to adjust. So just don't let that linger. Let that get that fixed and get that going. That way that's not an issue. There's not been that many besides the 5. This is not what, but I'm on some wood somewhere.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Has there been any thought on a way to have the files transfer within the districts? Like whether you use the, attach it to a document, like you create a 504 form and attach it to that. Has there been any?
We talked a lot about that with our IT folks here, and our OEP folks here. Right now, it doesn't because of the way the form is.
Mhm.
We're hoping to get an actual preschool module. Like you have the special ed module and you have a preschool module, then everything will be transferable. And that takes time and money. So we're hoping eventually to get us down to that level. But I think you just volunteered to help me out with that. On how to figure all those things out with our IT folks. I know that you're an expert at it, so. That is a big deal. The file transfer is a big deal. Because our kids are so trained in it. That is a huge deal. So that is something that we were disappointed to learn originally. And hopefully we can find that answer in the future.
We had a staff person that attended DEC, I guess it was last month. And she said a ton of trainings, information sessions on the COS system and how people are using it across the country. And and have brought back for us some resources to say, once we get through this year of learning how to do it, to really have those in-depth conversations about the family piece and how to collect it in ways that are part of the program, not that feel like a little bit separate. Not that we already don't get family input, but for this in particular, just some great information, great resources, things that have worked, and just, what the data is showing. I mean, it was just a really great thing. And I think that's a piece too that maybe our teachers don't even know or hear that we have shared is this is not just isolated. This is a national, like, I don't know if call it a movement or what's happening, but that it's part of something bigger. Mm-hmm. And this is why. I mean, they knew that KEDS went away, the contract wasn't. I mean, they knew why, but really the understanding of the big COS system.
Well, it's nice from the 619 position as a state coordinator to go to these national meetings and not have to just sit and twiddle my thumbs while they talk about COS. I can actually engage in the conversation and say, help me, oh my gosh, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Those have been invaluable. Jen and I have done a lot of work with our outside TA partners, and it's nice to have those. I'm really glad that they've shared that feedback. That's
Yeah.
really great to hear that our teachers are even getting that, our support people are getting that information.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought up that doing it kind of, I guess the best way to put it is naturally through what we already do. Our teachers talked a lot about in the beginning just having that survey or questionnaire or whatever to take to with them on home visits so that they could get that information from parents in a more natural way and really communicate with them. Because like I heard somebody say earlier, you know, if you just ask parents to rate them on these areas, they're going to rate probably higher than the child can actually perform. And so having that kind of conversation has really been more meaningful. And then, of course, you know, there's some parents that maybe you can't get into the home or they keep, you know, rescheduling or whatever. And so then they've put that same questionnaire into a Google form that could be sent through Class Dojo so that parents could, you know, do it that way. And I think that's worked well for us so far. Yes, I'd be glad to send you that format or the survey so that you could have that to look at.
And Whitney Fowler did say it has opened doors for more meaningful conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Great. It's great to hear.
We actually just did this. We adapted our second home visit form for the spring and put boxes on the form, and it says child outcome summary for the family. So they take this on the home visit, and it has the boxes, and it has each one of them, and then it has child strengths, and then instead of putting like areas of focus or where families, we put emerging skills targeted. So it's not, your child's not penalized or it's not punitive because they're not here, but these are just the developmental emerging skills that we see. And our home visit forms are carbon copies. So the teacher can leave a copy with the teacher and then bring one back and put in the human folder. So we don't have to worry about getting it back. But we felt like we're going to revamp, I think, both of our forms, our first one and our second one for next year. But we were just trying to do something for this year to catch the spring family input for the home visit. So we just did that. I just sent them to printing yesterday. But we thought that we would be very intentional about putting COS and what it is on the form. So then teachers would spend some time to explain that to parents, what that means. So, yeah. And if y'all I don't know if you do like carbon copy forms for home visits, those have made a world of difference for our staff, for the first and second, just because you don't have to worry about coming back and making a copy and sending it home or put it in a backpack, but you just leave that with them. And there's a place for both the teacher and the parent to sign on the form while they're there. It's made a huge difference. So I think, you know, from this discussion is that, again, we're just keeping notes for ourselves for our district, what it looks like, asking these questions in your RTC meeting and kind of keeping track of those and asking others to do so. So then when it comes at the end of the school year, you know, what's the feedback? Then we have that ongoing feedback that we have and not trying to, I do that with GMAP every year. That's why I say it. Like I do GMAP and I'm like, oh, I need to put this in as a suggestion. Well, then I just try to get GMAP done. And then I'm like, I don't remember what it was, you know, and because I forget because I finished the task and I don't want to think, you know, I moved on. But I think this is such a big piece and just the fidelity of it and what we're trying to do, you know, for children to gather the most accurate information that's something that we could do proactively. And I feel like in our meeting in the summer or in the spring, we will revisit this again, because I think getting through this first hump of this and then, you know, going through the second wave of it, I think will be a different conversation.
That we do intend to send out some surveys to get feedback from everyone, but this group in particular, we will lean on to get that feedback from this process. It's new. Things are not stagnant. We have to change and we have to adjust and we have to make sure that we're doing what's best for districts, especially our teachers, as we know how overwhelmed they are. So absolutely looking forward to that conversation. Thank you for sharing about it. We're all a little nervous still, a little scared. Change is hard.
Yes, yes, but we're in it together.
Yeah.
We're in it together. So, so the next thing on our agenda is discussion of enrollment count. And I know we have mentioned that we're excited to kind of see what December 1's going to look like for us. So I just wanted to have this on the agenda because it's coming up pretty quickly for all of us. Just kind of where you are, if you have any updates or what your enrollment's looking like compared to last year to pre-COVID, just kind of having that, just kind of get a pulse on where we are.
Jennifer?
We lost 100 kids through COVID. And so, and I really had anticipated, maybe seeing us catch up with that last year, but we really did not. And so this year already, we've increased by 50 to where we were in 18-19, pre-COVID. So I really think that we may not get the whole 100, but we'll be back to where we were pre-COVID. And just a comment on that, I'm really struggling to just find a place to put these children, not necessarily because we don't have the physical space, but because the needs of the students are so intense in every classroom. And so every time it's really a sit-down discussion with, the people that evaluated the child, and just trying to figure out how to best serve the child because of the needs are so intense. It's really, that in and of itself has been a huge impact on our program this year. And I'm having to go beg and plead for more instructional assistants just to help paras, just to help with the needs of the students.
Fowler said steadily increasing their numbers as well.
We're low. We're lower than, we've not reached our pre-COVID numbers. We were close to 700 at our pre-COVID numbers, and we were at 619 yesterday, and the days are very closely closing out. So I don't anticipate, we set a team goal of 680, and we're not going to make it. We're going to be close, but we're not going to make it. Now, I will say we serve well over 700 children in our district because our Board of Education has provided me with numerous opportunities to offer spots to people who are on the bubble, and with ESSER funding, not even on the bubble. So we do serve, 780, 790 children, but for our actual state funded numbers, we're still going to be low, which is so frustrating because I feel like we're working overtime to find children. And, I think that we thought our income numbers were going to increase with everything that happened. And I did not see that in my district. I see I think we have done everything but knock on doors, in a caravan, because we certainly have tried, but our disability numbers probably have increased. I mean, we keep track of it. We fall about 70-30. I mean, we're trying every day to increase our income numbers, but some of that is just people not being willing to go the extra step to give you the stuff that you need. But some of it is there was a lot of help out there that didn't actually put them into categories that we thought would put them into. So I'm hoping that our March numbers will, help balance things out. But I keep it in my office on a chart for all of our team to see every day, and we're still not there.
So our actual enrollment is right now, when I checked yesterday as well, we are exactly where we were in March. Okay. We're about 65 to 70% below what we usually run. I hate to say it, we're one of those districts Kim was talking about. We only provide transportation midday because we don't have enough people to drive the regular routes. So we have had 80 students opted out. Also, so, yeah, we were hoping to have at least 500 by Christmas. You know, slow growth is better than no growth.
Right.
But I don't know what's reasonable.
Yeah.
Which is, I think a concerning issue because all around me, we've had the same thing with districts that haven't been able to provide transportation. We release preschoolers at 1 o'clock every day, so we have enough bus drivers to be in the rotation, not to have to talk about not having preschool transportation.
Wow.
So,
I feel
because
like,
they get back in time.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like this is something above the transportation issue. It needs to go to others than this room here, because I drive a bus, I drive a route, I drive preschoolers every day. And what the bus drivers have to go through to get their city bills, what they pay. I mean, I feel like that's a heart of a lot of the problems, because as a parent, I wouldn't be able to send my child to school without the transportation. So, I mean, this is something that I feel like it's beyond everyone in this room to even to tackle that problem.
Kim Witt said increased, and then Whitney Fowler wanted to provide a comment. There are lots of needs in coming in with autism diagnosis, but on a positive, these kids are transitioning well. And I think that we talked about this, that maybe doctors are being more cautious as not to miss a diagnosis, which may in turn cause some over-identification due to the fact that these kids are true COVID kids. Hope this makes sense, easier to speak about than type a short answer. But Whitney, thanks for typing it in. I hope I read it correctly.
Yeah, I think what she means, and we talked about this before, is that because a lot of these children were at home and maybe, more on electronics and devices than interactions with even adults or others, that we're seeing an increase in the number of children with diagnoses of autism as well. And I mean, that number, our severe number, is going to be much higher than it's been in the past. But we're wondering, is it a true child with autism, or is it just a lack of any experience? So
We're seeing kids that are true autism and more. And, I've always been I hated that people would say, oh, it's exploding, it's this, it's that, because, the research shows maybe it was under-identified, maybe it was this, maybe it was that. And that may be true for the one end of the spectrum, but the ones that we see, it's severe autism that's couldn't be misinterpreted for anything else. And there's more.
Well, we have seen that as well. And then several that are in the pipeline that are just getting diagnosed that we're not sure about. So we're seeing both.
Go ahead, Christy.
Right. Our numbers are steadily increasing, so we're proud that we've hit our funded enrollment for Head Start, so we're fully utilized in enrolling our state-funded pre-K now. And so I think, we have 2 to 3 families coming in every week to enroll their child. So I think as they're more comfortable with the health and wellness of their family, that's kind of what I'm hoping. We continue to put out flyers, and enrollment never stops. So I think it's just part of that continuing, like Carlina was saying, we continue to do everything but knock on every single door. But just reminding families that, they can put their child in preschool, and sending out that positive message about the services that we offer. Sometimes it's just not knowing. But we're also seeing a lot of transition and families moving into our area. So I think that's also kind of helping as well. So I'm glad to see it trending upward. It's not exactly where I want it to be, but it's getting there. So continuing to think positive.
For us in Fayette County, I pulled numbers, I guess last week, I think we were at 950. So we are seeing where we are, definitely moving towards the trend of what we were before COVID. For us, yesterday we had 4 families that came in to register for income. And then the day before, we didn't have any. So I'm not sure. So we are seeing still families coming in, but we have seen a huge increase in the number of children applying that are too young. And so some of those lead to, doing an intake form for the special ed process. And others of those are like, nope, we don't have any concerns. We just came out. And then we have seen an influx of over income families. So that come and aren't qualifying. So like that's where we're about where we were with our, what we have our incomplete at. So the families that have come in and have initiated the process. So we're sitting about where we normally were prior to COVID. But we have seen that influx into young and over income. So that, and then our students with disabilities, I mean, there's the special ed process to get them in. I mean, we've seen very much an influx in families wanting their children screened, and then children coming out with a diagnosis from that. So. Anybody else want to share any numbers? But I'm like, I think, I know that y'all had said that yours, and you wonder about, if we're Paducah seeing an increase and we're kind of seeing, where is it in the middle there, that what's happening in the state? Like we said, people moving in, people moving out, transportation, those kinds of things. What is it? But I think we are seeing, hopefully we'll be back next year to where we were prior to COVID. Is our hope. For sure.
I think we see an increase in those over income kids too. We have the daycare that we used to have that would serve our half day kids. Now we have it opened up for kids that aren't eligible for state funded. And that's helped, but it's probably because our families, I mean, if you want a job, you can get a job right now, and then they turn around, families that normally wouldn't work, they can find high paying jobs and they all need daycare. And so you get these kids that would normally go to a private daycare and there's no openings. They're desperate for somebody to watch their children so they can get to work. So it's a good thing, good problem to have.
As a state, we pull our numbers every Monday. We're like at 10,000 right now. So it's a little more than where we were this time last year. So we're still tripping. That's, we just now sent out count information. That number will absolutely increase over the next couple of weeks. But we're trending, maybe not to pre-COVID levels, but at least to from last year. So we'll see how it looks. Yeah, sure. That count information just went up Friday, I think.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see a boost coming up.
Yeah. And again, I think these are conversations too, for your RTC meetings to have with everybody in your district. Because I think, just like you were talking about the teachers learning from each other, I mean, we've all, if we've been around the table for a while, but there always seems something new that comes up. Hey, I could try that, or I haven't tried that, or revisit that. Especially after COVID, I think everything has changed. So something that, advertisement or something that was done before that didn't work, maybe, what we can do. But yeah, it is, it's always an interesting time as a preschool coordinator, as we move towards that December 1 deadline, for certain. So thank you all today for your input on that, for sure.
And we did put in information on Microsoft Bookings site where you go and you can schedule a one-on-one consultant. I do believe that Tasha is going to schedule herself for some open office hours in November. Please share that with your RTC team. That way, if anyone needs extra support or help, or if there's new folks out there that you know of, send them our way. And we want to make sure every kid gets counted.
Absolutely. So the next thing on our agenda is our open discussion. I was going to totally miss over the open discussion there piece for us. So this was just a time, I think, for us to kind of maybe revisit some of those priorities that we talked about in the summer, kind of where we want to go with those. I do also think for us, because we had, for those that are new, an executive committee and a priority committee. So we had those two, and for the executive committee, one of those charges was to create bylaws and set when new members needed to come on board, what that process was going to be, what our terms were going to be when somebody rotated on. So we kind of got all of those pieces hashed out and put together. But I guess my question is, and for us, I think there was a discussion that we don't actually have to have bylaws, but we have like governing those policies or procedures. But is that something that the executive committee now needs to put together in a document? That stuff, like what would be the next steps for the executive committee in that with the bylaws? And I'm just looking at you too, because
Yeah, well, it really helps the order of operations work best when you have that. But the only reason we said you didn't have to formally have that because it's not a governor appointed group. And so we have to have that. So, I mean, it's something that I think that you all could have and just update as you see fit. Thomas, don't you think that's a good
Yes,
idea?
I agree with you, Joe. So I do think it's something that we should have,
Okay.
especially, as we have new people coming on and people leaving off. I think it's good to kind of have that information, just stored for people to have
Okay.
them out there.
perfect.
Because people often wonder, so it's nice to already have that expectation. They're like, how long am I on here? Terms?
Right, and you have it in writing, right?
Right.
You have it in writing.
Exactly. And so in our Google Drive that someone had very nicely put in bylaws from the Gifted and Talented Education Committee. So this was a sample that was in there. So is that group state appointed or is that somewhat like this?
Yep, GP and the State Advisory Panel for Exceptional Children. Those are the two.
Because these were a little bit longer than this one. So that's why I was asking, because I was like, if this is a good sample.
Yeah.
For those on the executive committee to, I think, follow and look at if that is okay or helpful, like a roadmap. Again, I think either one of these can be used, but this one's a little bit more lengthy. If you look in the Google, that's why I asked, because I was like, I assume this is the state point, because it's pretty thick, but I wasn't sure about this one. But so that I think is something that we need to do for the executive committee. And then just kind of sharing what the priority committee does is because we have not lost so many members, people just didn't jump ship. They had other responsibilities or took other roles. And so during that time, in the summer, we were such a small group that we kind of all just had a discussion at that time about priorities and things of concern that we could bring to the table and work through. But now that we're back to full capacity, I think is if we work in those, but the priority group would kind of hone in on what exactly is it that is state funded in our tenure in this group that we want to do to make changes for state funded for the future, for now and for the future. And so then we would bring those priorities to the whole group and have a discussion. It wasn't that the priority committee was making decisions, but then it would be, but having a large group discussion at times about priorities can go a lot of different ways. So this just kind of harnessed the work that we were doing. So for our new folks, like what would we do to what committee they would want to be on, or how do we do that? Like what would be the next steps for that?
Interesting because the advisory groups, they've taken different approaches. The State Advisory Panel, for example, they created like 6 committees and then they let people volunteer. And then I've seen where that's a lot of committees. So I wouldn't recommend that many, but they have a lot of areas. And then sometimes the chair will appoint and say, we have a couple committees, this is our focus, and just divide it up in half and put a few. But it seems to work best on that volunteer basis and just a couple committees, and then you focus on what are the goals or the priorities of the group, and then that allows a more, a deeper learning time for that group to be able to devote to that, and we can have committee time during the meeting. You can have breakouts and then report. Seems to work really well.
Yeah.
So it really is up to you and how you want it, but volunteer seems to be for the area that you need.
So I will say that the Post-it note that I had on my paper with everybody, their committees, stayed on my desk. So I have been shuffling, if you've seen me, to see if that I could find where they were. Because for me, I was on the priority committee. Arlena was on the priority committee. Has everybody else rotated off that was on there?
The priority?
You were on,
Yeah.
executive. We weren't on the executive.
Christy was on the executive. I was on priority. She was doing executive.
Yeah, executive was myself, Christy, and Whitney Fowler.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Because that's why I had looked at it today, and like I said, I had it written out, and I apologize that I left that on my desk to see where the gaps were in which groups. Simbri, what group was she on? Did she?
I don't think she's been on a group. Have you been
Oh,
on a group?
no, I'm not. No, I'm not been in a committee.
Okay.
She kind of came on in the middle, like
Of
we
all
had
of that,
a couple
okay.
people leaving and her
And I kind of feel like everybody didn't go on.
Yeah,
Like, you had volunteers.
Okay.
And it was about 3 and 3.
Okay.
And maybe the last time when we met and we met as a team, maybe because we were in person, you joined the other group.
Yes.
That's what made me think you were there, because Andrea and I were out there in that hallway on the table talking to our team about, because we were the only ones in person at that time.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's right. We took volunteers, and I think it was like 3. There may have been 4 on the executive. What was there? Somebody else on your all's? Did you say?
the 3 of them.
Or was it just the 3 of you?
I honestly don't remember. I think it was the 3 of us.
Okay.
And for some reason, I also thought, Whitney, that we said you'd be on executive, but you're going to be on another committee as well. I don't remember all of it. It's all
I don't
good.
have to have everybody on committee either. It can,
Just knowing myself, I probably didn't sign up to do any bylaws. But that's what I said no. But I think you're right. I think that maybe I was going maybe on both, participating on both. So you can see where my heart lies. I was joking about the bylaws. I'm like, so those are just kind of like what we do, what we have the priority in the executive committee, kind of where the work that would be done. So, I mean, do I need to make a motion or volunteer, or do I just give people time to think about like what?
think about it.
Just now, or just come back, or at the end of the meet, like what?
I think it'd be good at next meeting to finalize. So give people time to think between this meeting and the next meeting to say, we'd like to establish some committees, be thinking about what committee you'd like to serve on, and then we'll finalize and vote at the next meeting. And you can get your bylaws finished at the next one. It should have it wrapped up.
And I also think it'd be important to, especially for me too, to understand the purpose of each committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's extremely important. We can establish it.
And Thomas, that's a great point, because I feel like some of the groups just create committees that create committees, and it's not very effective.
Yeah.
It needs to be really focused on, well, what's the needs or the purpose of the group? What do you want to provide feedback and advice on? And so there may not be a need for a committee if you don't want one, so you don't have to do that if you don't want.
Right. Okay. I think we had actually talked about that too. As the executive committee gets the work done, then we can move away from that. That committee could.
Opportunity for others to move some work a little bit faster and devote some more time, because you can't hardly get everything done here.
Correct.
So you can say, let's give
Correct.
that to the committee group.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we'll revisit this.
I love
Okay.
that purpose and an outcome.
Okay.
Yeah, outcome.
Okay. So then we can, at our next meeting, revisit this and see, and if there's anybody that's currently on a committee that would want, I guess, to, since we're kind of, would that be a consideration of if somebody wanted to rotate, or I don't have time now to do that, to just kind of look at the groups as a whole?
Yeah.
At the next time, okay. Or look at them separately, but collectively who's on it, if they want to rotate off kind of stuff. Perfect. All right. Thank you. I had been, that discussion, I felt like we needed to happen, because I think we do want to follow up from some of the discussion that we had in July, but that was more of a mesh of all of everybody, not really a committee. But I do feel like as we have these conversations, then this may go back to the priority committee to gather the information, but then bring it back to the whole group for a discussion. So one of the things that was talked about that we shared in the summer were just, teacher safety in going on home visits in a world post-pandemic, and what that looks like. And as a district, what are you doing? Where are teachers having home visits, that kind of thing. So we talked about that. The other piece for teachers that we talked about that was also really big was caseload. Knowing that preschool teachers there's not a regulated caseload number for teachers, and that to look at that, because as we've talked about teachers throughout this meeting and, taking things off their plate and what that looks like and the number of students with disabilities increasing, Jennifer's conversation about, having strategic conversations of where children are going. I definitely think this is something, as you're thinking about which group to be on, as a priority group that we're going to dig into. I think I see a lot of head nods, and from the conversation, just like what can we do to help shape that moving forward, for the state of Kentucky and for our preschool teachers. And then one of the other things that I had that we had talked about, or that we had talked about in the past, is looking at a quality tool for us and state funded, like something that is consistent, since we're no longer using the ECHRs, but what is it that we could bring to the table as a group? And I think I have some information on a tool that I have just researched and looked at and thought this would be something that I would like to share with the priority group and the team. But I think also for you guys looking at that, and if you all, in your research find something, but just bringing it to us and letting us as a priority team dig through that, look at that, and then bringing it may be some to the table for the whole group to actually look through, so we can. I'm excited about that piece. I think as a tenure on this group, if we can move forward and get something, and as a work with KDE and begin to work towards, is this what we're going to do? I think, when it's time to rotate off, looking back on the work, I think that's something that, for me personally, is just big, is to say that we have been able to come together and have input into, the KDE process and what it is, and have suggested these instruments or brought this, and that we're able to do that research piece for all of our colleagues across the state and all of the teachers, and through that lens, and bring that to KDE with some suggestions. I mean, I just feel like that's something big, and with the caseload piece that we can do and have those conversations for our programs. Any other priorities that or things that we talked about?
Talked about communication with First Step. That was one of the priorities.
Yes. So communications between state funded and First Steps. And again, I think if I remember correctly, we're talking about that that is so different among counties and what it looks like. But I do think that we talked about, like, there could be a framework or a structure that could be put together, that could be, if it's best practices or a template, that if you're struggling, or this is what it looks like, because the community, your First Steps community people and that process and things, but having some kind of framework to help support that. And I don't know if anybody has any updates to share, if things with the process that they've had with First Steps since the meeting this summer. Any updates?
I do think our RTCs are more involved. I know what Simpson County is. We've been talking about it a lot. I think I remember some of the discussion in the priority group was that just that a district would go onto a cap if they have one child that they do not get transitioned by the 3-year-old birthday, no matter what the circumstances are. That was a big discussion in our preschool directors, talking about that as our priority. And I don't know if there's, anything that can be, I don't know, that's above us in here, right. But I do think that that's something that we were hoping that people will talk about and see if there are some situations that you are absolutely in zero control of. Right. And the only people that will go on the cap is the school district, but there really are 2 players in that. So.
Yeah. And I think that's something like if for us as a group to revisit those conversations, because I think that the more we talk about it, and I know KDE knows that that's a priority too, I think for our fellow coordinators out there too, to know that we're not letting that fall, because it does have an impact on us at the district level, like that we want to keep, having that conversation, or, people hearing us having that conversation, to know that we're not dismissing that at all, because it does have implications for us as a school district.
And I will say, I personally am glad that you mentioned workload first, because that's a personal priority for me in my district, because I know it is for a lot of us, because we all know that, right. We're losing preschool teachers to kindergarten, because kindergarten seems a lot easier than preschool and with a lot less restriction about what you do. So, you know, we are constantly, when something is added to their plates beyond our control, then we are trying really hard to figure out what can we move that will help them. But, you know, there does come a time that you have overloaded all of your own office people with duties. So I am so interested in what everybody else is doing to help relieve some of that, because, you know, it is, when you think that the K-12 outlook is a special ed teacher and a reg ed teacher together, working together to service children. And the preschool model is that one person holding both roles.
Right.
That in itself is a huge undertaking for a preschool teacher. And then add all these other components that fall into place because the children are 3 and 4 years old. Sure. It's huge. Sure.
Well, the new disability study, my district teachers write the IEPs, they will do all of that. So adding that in, COS in, it's been fairly right. Yeah.
And I have thought about all the times that they started here with talking about how the needs have increased in the children that we're seeing in classrooms. You know, just that day-to-day interaction has caused them to have even more, you know, on their plates. So, and we have great people. I want to hold on to every one of them.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
There's only so much that a Reese cup will do for people. I mean, you know, I do a lot of that. I buy chocolate every week, but, you know, we do really have to be very, very, I think, as a whole state about, you know, how fabulous these people are and the work they're doing foundationally with children and families. And we've got to be, you know, just mindful every day of what's being put on their plate.
Go ahead, Jennifer, and then Christy.
I just want to piggyback off of that, you know, that really is the biggest priority for me because, you know, Scott County is a rapidly growing district all the time and has been since I moved here. And when I said earlier that the needs of the students have increased, we have some classrooms that, not knowing when I, you know, placed students into a classroom, they might have been income eligible, but then once they got into the classroom were referred for all these needs because the child, you know, who knows what the situation was, but maybe it's a COVID issue or maybe it's something else, but they are so significant that, you know, out of 12 kids, 8 of those children have IEPs and 4 of them are significant kids. I have teachers going home crying every day because the job is so hard. And I don't want to lose them either. And I'm buying donuts and you know, chocolate and all the things. And coming into the school year, I said, we're going to try to do our best to stay positive, and I'm sending out positive messages every day. And we've got lots of little things going on so that we can try to keep that attitude, but it's difficult. And I would argue anyone to say that the preschool teaching job now is the most difficult job in the district, because even a FMD teacher or a teacher, you know, of those more severe kids has 10 kids or less with, you know, 3 or 4 assistants, and then they collaborate with all the regular ed teachers. I mean, it's just not even manageable.
And then you get the readiness test scores back and they feel judged.
Yes, right.
And that's hard to wrap. There's a little more information out about it, you know, that it really is not a good indicator about the first month of kindergarten, if that's who's ready or not. But in a one-time snapshot, but still, I mean, that comes out, it's on school report card, and they have that hard year, and then they get slapped with that at the end of it, or the next year. So they can't feel, to their peers, they look like they're not being successful.
Right.
Go ahead, Christy.
Thank you. want to second, third, celebrate, woohoo, everything that Jennifer and Carlina have both said, and Miss Kim as well. I'd love for our committee to pull the the school superintendents just put out a early learning paper, or I guess kind of a rubric that looks at what, early childhood should look at. I think it'd give us some great talking points, maybe Whitney, for another priority discussion. I pulled that as part of the early learning cohort that I participated in last year. And it talks about having lower class sizes. And it talks about having 2 teachers in a classroom and an assistant. It's just a guidance. It's just a rubric. But a lot of superintendents put a lot of hard work. And I know NACY was part of that discussion, the National Head Start Association. So I know that there's some reputable organizations that were part of that document. And, besides the special ed side of things, they're also the RTI implementer. In what I call big school, they have somebody who is dedicated to RTI, sometimes tier 2 and tier 3, whereas in the classroom, the regular ed teacher, the preschool teacher is part of that equation. So it's hard to take all of those layers off of that, but I agree. I think we all do everything we can to support our teachers, but at some point, I've got one teacher that leaves today to go to kindergarten. Today's her last day with us. And I had another teacher say, well, how do you do that mid-year? So I think that we've got teachers that are definitely looking at that. Husbands and partners don't want to see their partner coming home with bruises on them. So I definitely think it's a conversation that needs to be had to see how do we support it overall, because as administrators, there's only so much we can do as well when our hands are tied. So.
And that's what I want to clarify. When I was talking about the quality thing and moving forward, I do think that that's something as a group that we can support and get in. I absolutely agree about the caseload. I don't want anybody to think that I wasn't saying that, but I think in reality, it's like for independent districts, are we going to, I have presented that to our board. So as Fayette County, we make a decision about preschool, but to make it for the state level, I mean, that's regulatory change. That is something and that's where I wanted to point out, we can start that conversation, I think, while we're on here, but as our tenure on here, I don't think that we're going to be able to get regulatory change by the time that we exit off. But I think absolutely that's a priority, and that we're having that discussion and we're talking about it for certain. But I think if we're talking statewide, that will have to be a regulatory change. But like I said, in Fayette County last spring, I think I shared this, I took a 5-year plan of preschool to our board, and one of that was caseloads. And I discussed what that looked like for our teachers, and I had that conversation. And again, if it, how it takes to move things at the state level, but as a district level, can we go ahead and make changes and make modifications and look at that from a district point? So I just wanted to say that I'm absolutely for that, but I think realistically, we can have that conversation and we can be that push, but I think the folks coming after us will hopefully maybe get to tie that one up. But I think that's a big lift, but I think it's a big lift that we are prepared to start and do for our teachers and our children in our buildings, for certain. Yeah.
Can that paper that she referenced, can that be put into can that be shared and put into our folder so we can see that?
Yes. Yeah, just send that to me and I'll add it. Thank you.
And I think that covered the priorities, the safety, the caseload, the quality tool, and then the first steps transition. I think are we good? Okay, perfect. So I also have written down here for this time, the family-friendly schools that Christy had mentioned. And I think that's something too, that if we could get that information shared, in our Google Drive. I'm on the Family Engagement Pritchard Committee, and we talk a lot about this, and to hear a preschool having that conversation, because I've seen the elementary school piece, and I think that's something really good to share for folks. So I was glad to hear you mention that, Christy. Thank you. Are there any other Any other topics in our open discussion?
Good discussion.
It was a very good discussion. Thank you all. We're right on time. We have about 6 minutes, so that's right. We are doing good. And does this time seem to work best for everybody since we changed it? Does it work? So I think that we would want to continue on this time. I think that's great.
I love your idea of, your suggestion of us going back and talking to the RTC that we are part of. I would ask if you would care, could you send us something like of 3 or 4 things you want to make sure we share with them?
Sure,
Just
absolutely.
so we are all kind of being consistent across the state.
Sure. Absolutely. All right, so the next thing is our closing remarks. That is Andrea, and then our exit slip will be discussed.
So, thank you so much for coming. Great to see people in person. Great to see you guys online too. Thanks for coming and joining our group. I always get like nervous when we first start and kind of go through stuff pretty quickly. And I'm like, oh, we're going to be done in an hour. And then we're always pushing up against because the conversation is so great. So I really appreciate the dedication that you all have to our youngest learners in our state. So, Joe, you're going to have the
I'll
exit
put the
slip.
exit slip in the chat and then send an email as well. So you'll have that. And yeah, for the new members, we just have an exit slip link for each meeting. And then it's just an opportunity for you to provide feedback to us to help prepare for the next meeting. If you have any questions or issues, you rate the meeting and then just use that because we want to look at that to make sure we're meeting your needs. And if there's anything you want changed or recommended, just put on the exit.
And we do look at those. So please fill that out. For sure. What did you say about the travel stuff?
Oh, yeah, we do reimburse for travel needs as well. So if you had to have overnight lodging and then our travel mileage here, then just submit that to us. And so.
So do you send out a form for that?
Yeah, there's a form. I'll drop the form in Google Drive. That way you can have that and then you just fill that out, put your mileage and what they'll ask you to do is create a vendor code if you've never gone through that process, because every person who gets reimbursed has to have what's called a vendor code. Sounds weird, but it's a vendor code, and that's how you get reimbursed. So we can help you work through that process to get the vendor code. It's through our Office of Finance, and so that just gives you a heads up for that. But the reimbursement form, you send it to us, we process it, and then once you have your vendor code, everything should move smoothly, should be directly deposited and all that. So, but if you have any questions, just shoot me or Andrea an email and we'll follow up and help with that.
Are you?
Yeah. Are you good?
The travel stuff is new.
Yeah.
For me. So I'm kind of that's why I first one.
It's a little
It's
bit
a joke,
crazy,
'cause I
but
don't
once
know
you
how to
get it going, it's easy. It's all
Yeah.
nice.
Yes. Any other questions or anything? You good? Get online?
Thanks for being with us today. Have a great day. I'll put the exit slip in the chat.
So are they gone?
They're still there.
Okay, so I was saying. Meeting is January 26th. So it will be from 11 to 1. And will there continue to be a virtual option?
Yeah, as long as everybody's good with that.
Okay, so there would be a hybrid availability in January for that meeting.
Seems to be working okay.
Yeah, I mean, is that good, y'all?
Everybody's good with the hybrid
But I
virtual.
do have one question. So in regards to the hybrid, how would that work when we break out into the?
We just do tea rooms into it.
Okay.
Yep.
I think we did that early on because I had to go down. I was at a fish bowl, that's what they said, and so we had online. So we
Create breakout rooms in here too. It just gets kind of weird with people on site and on here. You have to have another laptop. So, I mean, we can manage
We've done it
that.
once, yeah.
And we have mentioned that it is preference for, of course, to be on site. We're trying to get back, but we're just being patient, so.
and two, weather in January is always iffy too. So to have that that option in January.
I noticed one advisor, the GT group, they they put a hybrid, an on-site and a virtual to balance it out. So they expected people to be on-site at one, but then they gave them a hybrid and a virtual and let everybody do that. So I thought that was kind of a good option. And you could plan the virtual one over the winter weather months, you know? I thought that was-
That is,
Because it is nice to be with everyone together too, to
Yeah,
see
it is.
everyone.
You might consider that.
yeah, okay. All right, so we are ready to adjourn our meeting, and could I ask for a motion to adjourn our preschool coordinator advisory group meeting today, October 27th?
Jennifer Walrod, I'll motion to adjourn.
Could I get a second?
Susan has a second.
We got a second, thank you. Is there any discussion? So I also have to ask for a vote for this motion. So when I say your first name, if you'll respond back with your first and last name, and that if you approve or not. Simbri,
Simbri Criselago, yes, I approve.
Whitney, is she gone?
He's gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whitney gone.
Of course.
Yes.
I thought she was in the corner. Christy,
Christy Lewis, yes.
Carlina,
Carlene is sharing, yes.
Jennifer,
Jennifer Walrod, yes.
Ashla, Andrews, yes. Chris,
Chris Westfield, yeah.
Kim. Is she gone too? She is. She dropped. Okay. And then Susan.
Susan Matheson, yes.
All right. Well, thank you all. We are officially adjourned. Thank you.